Welcome to the Know. I'm Ashley.
I'm Mica.
Rainbow Six Siege's Year 3 content is dropping today,
Woo!
but there's another little update happening that's making just as many waves with the game's community.
Over the weekend, Ubisoft announced a new automated system that targets hate speech in order to curb player toxicity. And from the sound of it, they're going to be using their new mighty ban hammer pretty freely.
I mean, come on, what if you call someone like a fuse mate?
Oh shit!
Is that hate speech?
Probably.
Okay, on a more serious note, understandably, some players are not reacting too well to these new sweeping policies, arguing that Ubisoft is forcing players to censor themselves rather than finding a real solution to toxicity. So now we get to have a super fun conversation about that, because for some reason, be excellent to each other just isn't enough for some people on the internet.
Yeah, all of this started thanks to a post on the Rainbow Six Siege subreddit by Ubisoft community developer Craig Robinson. In the thread, Robinson and others from Ubisoft unveiled the new system meant to cut off toxic behavior while also responding to players' concerns and comments.
Robinson wrote, "Starting next week, we will be implementing an improvement on the system we have been using to ban players that use racial and homophobic slurs or hate speech in-game."
He also outlined the lengths of bans which will be served on a case-by-case basis, and generally served out in 2-day, 7-day, and 15-day increments, or apparently forever, which is also an option for egregious or repeat offenders. So say goodbye to all those operators.
Robinson went on to be a little bit more specific about what constitutes slurs or hate speech, pointing to the game's already in place code of conduct. He said, "Any language or content deemed illegal, dangerous, threatening, abusive, obscene, vulgar, defamatory, hateful, racist, sexist, ethically offensive, or constituting harassment is forbidden."
So basically, the rules that are already in place and already result in player bans are still in effect as always.
But even more!
Exactly, they'll just be able to handle it in an automated fashion now. Robinson also added that anytime a player is banned for toxic behavior, a global status will show up alerting all players what happened.
Oh, like a name and shame.
Exactly, very similar to what happens now in the game with BattlEye. You'll just be branded a racist douchebag.
The good old shame approach.
Aw, yeah.
So in the comments, Robinson also gave a few more details about how this is going to play out. This automated system is applied to text chat only, so voice chat can still be, as shitty as you want, apparently.
However, in that instance, players can use the support tool in the game to communicate directly with the Ubisoft support team. It'll maybe get you a faster result in some instances, but Ubisoft says they're not going to be relying on it just solely anymore. And since it's for text chat only, it'll only apply to PC. PS4 and Xbox players will be subject to rules of conduct for that specific platform.
Right, so, okay, sure, none of this sounds too overreaching, I guess, but you can imagine how it all went over with the players. The thread was quickly locked down by moderators because of, surprise, toxic comments and rule breaking.
Wow.
However, there were some legitimate questions being asked from players, and Ubisoft was on hand to clarify those issues and shed some light on gray areas. Because anytime you have these terms, everyone says, well, what about this? Does this count? Does this count? Does this count? A lot of questions around it.
The most common concerns revolved around that vulgar language clause in the code of conduct.
Because let's face it, we all use vulgar language when we're playing.
Exactly, if there would be any improvements made to block toxic players, and those concerned citizens were worried about false positives. So boy, do people sure get super worried about those hypothetical false positives in these scenarios.
I just want to be able to swear. One of the most asked questions was, what's the deal? Are you going to stop people from swearing or saying some crazy shit when they get excited? Because, come on, you still want a guy who fused the hostage that he's a fucking idiot, right?
Ubisoft emphasized, no, vulgar language will not get you banned from the game. Again, the main thing they're looking for here is the use of slurs and hate speech. They also added that they understand the game is competitive and that people will engage in some vulgar trash talk now and then, so hey, you can call the other team dickholes all you want, it's fine.
Or tell them to eat a bag of dicks. That was always one of my favorites.
That's a great one. You're good with that.
Ubisoft is setting a fairly hard no-tolerance line about all of this, but it sounds like they are intending to enforce it. When one user asked if they could appeal this fascist police state new system, one Ubisoft employee said, yeah, you can go play literally any other game.
Oh, sick burn, Ubisoft! And as for slang and hate speech written in other languages, Ubisoft plans to expand it to include multi-language support soon.
Come on, you couldn't even get French on launch, Ubisoft? That's like your thing. Of course, the devil's advocates there too, arguing maybe a better way to curb toxicity might be to include a block button for both text and voice chat, which already kind of exists anyway, although muting someone's in-game voice doesn't mute their text chat at the moment. So they could do some work on the tools side.
It's a fair point, but simply muting a toxic person doesn't really keep that toxic operator from acting toxic. It just means that one more person can't hear them, but kicking them from the game entirely, yeah, that'll stop them from being toxic assholes.
Well,
yeah,
for a while.
For a
anyway. Some argued that Ubisoft is forcing people to censor themselves, and well, yeah, that's true,
Yeah.
kind of. It seems to be the point. If people aren't able to keep some of this awful language out of the game in the first place, then Ubisoft is probably going to step in so that the game gets a desirable place to actually play and interact with other people.
Which will understandably make a few players worried about getting dinged by the system unfairly, especially since with Rainbow Six, it's not a simple matter of just rebuying the game if you want to enjoy it the same way you always have. With all the years of operators, attachments, and skins, people have put a lot of work into their gear and unlocks.
It's an investment. Ubisoft did give some clarification about that, stating that why the bans will be handled on a case-by-case basis is, well, I mean, it comes down to, so for the instance of legitimate words that also double as slang and hate speech in some instances, that's a concern, right? Players won't have too much to worry about there. You won't get a permanent ban over something like that if the system misidentifies you. Plus, you'll be able to appeal bans.
Yeah, and in general, that was the point the team reiterated. If you're not being toxic, you don't have anything to worry about. The text chat logs will prove whether you're toxic or not.
So, I guess don't type out a bunch of racist, hateful stuff? I mean, theoretically, that shouldn't be that hard.
It's really not that hard to not be hateful. So, given the recent surges in Rainbow Six Siege's popularity, some of these developments aren't too surprising. A huge influx of players has hit the game in the last few months, which no doubt brings with it a boost in numbers of toxic operators.
Its player numbers have doubled since October, topping out an average of 70,000 players and peak concurrents around 132,000. It's currently number 4 in the top 5 most played Steam games behind PUBG, CSGO, and Dota 2. So it's up there.
Yeah, and when you consider that Ubisoft wants to continue to support the game for years to come, with no sequels and 10 years of content updates for this single game.
An actual 10-year franchise?
Exactly! It makes sense that they'd want to clean things up and keep it from getting a reputation of a toxic place to play. Blizzard has tried to make similar strides with Overwatch, and PUBG has mixed success of its own in that regard.
Yeah, although PUBG has some of its own issues. Today also happens to be the launch of some brand new content for Rainbow Six Siege. The Year 3 Operation Chimera includes a new Left 4 Dead style cooperative defense mode titled Outbreak, as well as new operators, and thanks to these new anti-toxicity measures, new, hopefully nicer ways to chat with internet strangers.
So what do you guys think of Ubisoft's new policies to make Rainbow Six Siege less toxic? Be a nice person! Let us know in the comments.
Where does my mom fall into this? Like, where does she fall in the conversation? Because she seems to be the main topic whenever you're talking to someone on the internet.
Fair.
Anyway, for all future updates on all things gaming, remember to like this video. If you're new to this channel, subscribe to the know.
Be nice. Just be a good person. He also outlined the lengths of bans which will be severed on a case-by-case. Wow. And generally served out in 2
Here, right?
Right, of course. Ubi-size.
Today also happens to be the launch of some brand new content for Rainbow Six Siege, the Year 3 Operation Chimera.